in from elsewhere around the world. I'm Kathleen Jones. I'm the founder and the CEO of the Prader-Willi Research Foundation Australia. And I'm also mum to Chloe, who was the catalyst for our organisation and our work. And this is her beautiful smile lighting up your screen. Thank you for joining us this Saturday morning on the east coast of Australia at least. I'm delighted that we are speaking with Dr. Tian Li and Dr. Mansi Jamin from Aardvark Therapeutics about their HERO clinical trial. I'm really excited to hear from them. And as everybody here today knows, hyperphagia is the most debilitating symptom for most of our loved ones with Prader-Willi syndrome. I can't imagine a more important reason to be meeting and talking this Saturday morning. Reflecting this importance is the fact that our audience today spans the globe, and we're really delighted that Australia is going to be one of the first countries with the HERO clinical trial. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands on which we are meeting. I'm joining today from the lands of the Turrbal and Jagera nations. We at Prader-Willi Research Foundation Australia pay our respect to elders past, present and emerging, and we look forward to the day when there is healthcare equality. Welcome to all First Nations people who are joining us today. Today is a live Q&A session, so please put your questions into the Q&A section. You can see just here where I'm pointing with my cursor. Our research director, Dr. Diane Webster, will moderate the Q&A following the presentations from Dr. Li and Dr. Jamin. Clinical trials are a critical step in the pathway to making new medications available and accessible to our loved ones with Prader-Willi syndrome. We at PWRFA have been working hard to grow the clinical trial infrastructure necessary for Australians with PWS to participate in such trials. And Australia is set to be the second country in the world recruiting for the HERO clinical trial, all things progressing smoothly with ethics, of course. We're delighted with this progress for the Australian community, and we're so grateful to Aardvark Therapeutics for making it happen. We are a for-purpose organisation, and we rely on your generous donations and your support to keep our good work going. Our May Finding 15 campaigns are an important campaign for us each year, and our Sydney walk this year was rescheduled to June 15 due to wet weather, so you can still get involved. Anybody here who's in New South Wales, you're very welcome to come along to our Finding 15 walk in Sydney on the 15th of June 2025 at Sin Woolwich. We would love to see you there. And of course, this year we're incredibly grateful to be sponsored by some of the key movers and shakers in Prader-Willi syndrome internationally. And Aardvark Therapeutics are a national champion sponsor. Thank you so much for supporting our community. So now I'm delighted to introduce the two leaders who are pioneering a novel approach to treating hyperphagia. Aardvark Therapeutics has been making headlines as a clinical stage biopharmaceutical company and recently completed a successful IPO. And what sets Aardvark apart is their focus on hunger suppression rather than appetite control. And when Dr. Li spoke about this at our conference in Sydney last year, I know it was a distinction that resonated deeply with the families. So joining us today is Dr. Tian Li, founder and CEO of Aardvark Therapeutics. He brings over 20 years of biotechnology innovation to the table. He's a physician scientist with an MD from UC San Diego, and he's worked on advancing multiple biomedical innovations across immunology, cardiovascular and neurological diseases. And under his leadership, since 2017, Aardvark has developed their breakthrough compound, ARD-101, which has received FDA orphan drug designation. We're also joined by Dr. Mansi Jamin, Chief Medical Officer, who joined Aardvark in September 2024. Dr. Jamin is a paediatric endocrinologist with 15 years of clinical experience. Together, they're leading the development of the ARD-101 and phase 3 clinical trial that's now underway. I'll hand over to Dr. Li to tell you more.
Thank you so much, Kathleen. It's a wonderful opportunity here, and I really appreciate everyone spending their Saturday morning to hear our presentation for Aardvark. I hope you can see my slides on the screen, and they're presented there. And this usual disclaimer, because we are a publicly traded company now, and if these are, just wanted to qualify that. Then we were established, as Kathleen mentioned, in 2017, headquartered in San Diego, California. We're a clinical stage biopharmaceutical company. And as noted, our key distinction is that we're having a small molecule drug that interrupts hunger as opposed to appetite. And we'll speak more to that in the later slides. And our investigational drug has showed promising results in a phase 2 trial, and I'll be stepping through some of the data that we saw in that trial as well. And we're currently in the process of activating and enrolling our phase 3 trial, which is now open in the United States. And we do look forward to having many patients being recruited from Australia for this study as well. So the key underpinning of our approach is targeting hunger as opposed to appetite. And basically, to explain it, is that we have two drivers in our brain that really motivate us to eat. One is appetite, which is a reward-based drive, and then hunger is a pain avoidance drive. So one of the examples I like to illustrate is if you like ice cream or cake, appetite is compelling you to eat those food items. And if that delicious food item were to turn into, say, dog food, you wouldn't have any appetite for it. But if you were trapped in a room with only that to eat, only dog food that is, over enough time, your hunger would compel you to eat that. So that's not motivated by food quality. And a lot of the drugs that are out there for obesity, for instance, we believe they're mostly anti-appetite drugs. They diminish nausea, and they can make the appeal of food lessened. But Aardvark's approach is to actually go at it at the other end, to take away the discomfort of starvation or fasting. And for many reasons, we think that Prader-Willi individuals actually suffer from a dysregulation of hunger, and food quality is less an issue. It's just that discomfort is really not being addressed appropriately. And there are many ways to come to that conclusion. And this is also related to a dysfunction and dysregulation of releasing a satiety hormone called CCK. So just to kind of step back again, normally what happens is when you eat food normally, your body releases hormones to both grant satiety to both appetite and hunger. And the hormone that's released to reduce hunger is a hormone called CCK. And this is problematic in Prader-Willi individuals because in Prader-Willi individuals, the CCK level is normal at baseline, but when you eat food, CCK does not rise as it should, so they don't have that satisfaction that comes from eating normally. But this also leads to other issues in more than just manifestation of hunger. A deficiency in this CCK release can also relate to anxiety, inflammation, and extreme constipation, and also higher body fat percentage as well, too, which are all observed in Prader-Willi individuals and explainable by this dysfunction of appropriate CCK release. So just as a summary, Prader-Willi individuals have the capability of making CCK. However, if something is not triggering their release normally with food. So our drug is a secondary methodology to trigger that intrinsic release of CCK to grant satiety and also normalize a lot of the pathways that I've mentioned before. So our drug actually has some unique properties. It's an oral drug that we recommend to be taken twice a day, and it's a small molecule drug, which means it's not like a protein or a biologic large molecule drug. But when you take it by mouth, 99% of the drug is actually retained in the gut. So there's very little systemic exposure of the drug because the true target of our drug is in the gut. We're targeting these receptors in the gut, which in turn release CCK locally around the gut. And that in turn triggers a nervous system signal from the gut to the brain to shut down hunger, which is regulated in the brainstem. So it's a approach that actually has very selected exposure around the gut, and then is invoking this gut-brain signaling pathway and is really just enforcing normal biology by invoking this CCK-driven gut-brain connection. And I mentioned before, we actually have very high confidence that in addition to abrogating hunger, it has a very good probability to reduce a lot of the other challenges that Prader-Willi individuals often experience, including the anxiety, inflammation, and the extreme constipation among them. And as noted here, this is just a graphical way to represent what we think is happening at the level of the drug. So we have observed lots of encouraging signals, and it's based on our science that this is actually occurring. And it probably is good to note how we even came to approach Prader-Willi syndrome. Frankly, when we developed the drug, we were very convinced that this was something very novel. And as we were looking at this novel pathway, we noticed that it was helping with inducing CCK release and had a feature of really focusing on hunger as opposed to appetite. So we actually chose Prader-Willi because it was a problem that matched the solution, and we thought that it was a very good fit, and that's why we had high enthusiasm to go after Prader-Willi with this particular solution. And in terms of the data to date, as noted by Kathleen, we started the company in 2017, and over the course of many years, we elucidated more understanding about our drug and pathway, and we were able to dose it in healthy human volunteers, and then obesity subjects, and then Prader-Willi individuals. Overall, we've had over 70 individuals that have been dosed with ARD-101. We've never seen a severe adverse event with the drug. It's generally well tolerated, and when we see side effects occur, generally mild and transient in nature, and with repeated dosing, we've been able to see resolution of the side effects in almost every circumstance. And that led us to having confidence to pursue this phase 3 trial, which is potentially pivotal for registration and approval, we believe, which is what the HERO trial is. And the HERO trial stands, the acronym is the Hunger Elimination or Reduction Objective, if you want to know the origin of the HERO acronym for this trial. So to review some of the data we had before this phase 3, among the clinical studies we conducted were 18 subjects with Prader-Willi syndrome that completed dosing in a 28-day treatment course. Only 28 days, because at the time the company was conducting this study, we only had the preclinical data that the FDA would allow us to dose for that 28-day period. Clearly, we have much more than that now. We can dose, in theory, indefinitely, but at a time we could only dose for 28 days, which is why we selected that dosing interval. And in that 28-day period, we were very encouraged. For those of you who might be familiar, the measure of hyperphagia is a Hyperphagia Questionnaire of Clinical Trial version 9. It's a 9-question test with a 0 to 4 answer for each of these 9 questions. And then in the course of the 28 days, we saw an average reduction of 8 points or more on this scale. And we were very encouraged by this. We had anecdotes of very profound responses with patients leaving food on the plate and preferring to play games versus being focused on food, and just very, very strong anecdotes of evidence. In addition to the hyperphagia reduction, we also saw clinical signs of reduced anxiety and inflammation. And we're very hopeful that, I mentioned before, we can address more than just the hyperphagia. We also released data from DEXA scans recently that showed that we saw pretty notable reductions in both body fat percentage and body muscle gain as a group, which was very encouraging and something that we actually had expected based on our understanding of the drug. So we're very optimistic about moving forward, and those are other things that we'll be looking for as well. And then, as mentioned before, we've had a pretty broad clinical experience with that dosing, and because of the fact that the drug is gut restricted, we don't believe it has a notable interaction with other medication, It's not reliant on your liver or kidney to process or eliminate the drug, and we don't believe there's any risk to the immune system with the drug given what it does. So the phase 3 HERO trial, as mentioned, Australia is one of the first countries to be able to have access to ARD-101. Ultimately, we want to have up to 9 countries for this. It's already active in the United States, and the testing paradigm is that we will test our investigational drug against placebo for a period of 12 weeks within the treatment period. However, it's very notable that regardless of whether you have a family member that is in the trial and whether they're on the placebo group or the active group, at the end of the 12-week treatment period, we intend to have an open label extension where everyone participating will have access to our drug for an additional year. So I think that's an important point to underscore. And we were very mindful of convenience and practicality in our trial design. We tried to minimize the actual in-clinic visits. So it's only 4 clinic visits and 3 remote telehealth check-ins. Very importantly, we're trying very much to not have fasting as a requirement, which is often a component of these studies. So especially in the context of Prader-Willi syndrome, there's no fasting requirement. The routine is sensitive to the requisite lifestyle restrictions for Prader-Willi, so we want to be sensitive to that. We also will accommodate travel and lodging, and the company will pay for all the requisite travel as necessary, including the person accompanying the Prader-Willi patient. And as mentioned before, the intent is for every participant, whether they're on the placebo arm or active, to have access to the drug. And we're saying a year now, but our intent is to try to keep things going as long as we can until the drug is approved. That's our philosophical intent for the company. And the general inclusion criteria is there are more than this, of course, but the general one is a confirmed diagnosis of Prader-Willi syndrome with a component of hyperphagia, be at least 13 years old. I want to note that our previous trial only included patients that were 17 and up. We are now including patients 13 years and up, and we're working on trying to do the requisite things to be able to open this to younger patients as well too. So just wanted to be aware that even if it's a 13-year-old requirement here, we have an intent to eventually move it down to the younger ages when we're permitted to do so. So just wanted to be clear of that intent. We would if we could now, but we're just working towards that. And the other requirement is to have the same primary caregiver be accompanying the patient at each of these visits, just for consistency, for reporting for the questionnaires. And then here are my final slide. You see the QR code on the right, which will give you a link for more information. But of course, when we are activated, I'm sure this venue and the patient advocacy groups will be able to provide more information. We'll be very proactively sharing updates for when sites are ready to go. But some of the ones that we have intend to have participating in the trial are listed to the left. And with that, I will turn it over to Monty, who will share answers to questions that you might have. And I'll just want to say thank you again for the opportunity to speak on Aardvark. And I'll stop sharing my slide.
And now we'll head to the Q&A section. If everyone wants to pop in any of their questions into the Q&A, and we can get started on that.
As we're waiting for questions to come through, I think I would like to reiterate kind of some of the points that Tien made. So I'm a pediatric endocrinologist, and I joined Aardvark because the mission was for the patients that I was actively seeing. And I went into biotech with a mission that we would solve these unmet needs for my patients. Tien is a physician. He's seen patients. That is his sole purpose. And we live by that, breathe by that every day. It's so meaningful for us. And, we are lucky enough to be able to be in this space with a community that is so strong and passionate to make sure the best therapies are available for patients. And I always say this, and you will hear this over and over again, that protocols and anything we put on paper is just that, they're just on paper, but we actually can't make them come to life without you and your support and your interest. So first of all, we just want to thank you for being here and listening. And if we can be of support, if we can answer questions today, we will. But of course, you have access to us to be able to answer questions after this as well.
Thank you both so much for joining us. The talk was fantastic. So my name is Diane. I'm the Research Director here with the Foundation, and I'd echo what you've both said. It's been an absolute pleasure working with you over the last couple of years, and we're so excited to see this trial here in Australia. We talk quite a lot at the Foundation about not endorsing trials and about making sure that that people join the right trial, the right person in the right trial, making sure it's a right fit. I wonder if I could kick off some questions around that. What do you think would be an important question for families to ask when they're talking to the site leads in order to help them make that decision around whether this trial is a good fit for either themselves or for their child with Prader-Willi syndrome?
So, Tian, I'll start and then add anything after. So I think one thing I would always consider is what are the intricacies of the trial? What is required by the families, by the patient, and to make sure you're fully on board in the timelines, right? Because that really matters. What's your day going to look like? And that's one of the first questions you should definitely know. The other is outside of just understanding the mechanism of action, but the safety profile. What are the things that we've seen in the trials that we've run, and what do you anticipate in this trial, and what's different about this trial or this drug versus the safety parameters of, say, another drug or another trial? And then the other big piece, I think, is having the ability to have long-term treatment. So does this go beyond the trial? Is it just a short-lived trial? Do we get access to trial the study drug afterwards? All important things, because what we both didn't want to happen is that we enroll patients and then that's it. Then there's an end date and then there's no continuation, which is why we're working actively to make sure that there's an open label extension that would be available for patients after they complete the main trial.
Yeah, that's fantastic advice. Thank you. We have some questions coming in now. We have a family who are joining us from Perth. That must be very early. So firstly, thank you for getting up super early to join us. In terms of travel, is it is travel acceptable interstate? Perth's a long way from the sites on the eastern seaboard. Are you covering travel from all states?
Yes. That's an easy
Fantastic.
question. Yes.
Awesome. And I'm going to take that a step further as well, because we often have a New Zealand audience as well. And New Zealand and Perth are, there might be a sea between one, but travel distance and cost-wise, it's not too different. Are your approvals Australian only, or are you able to accept people traveling over from New Zealand as well?
It's Australia only at this time. Good question. Something that we can take back to see if there's any opportunity there.
Yeah, look, I mean, recognizing there's a regulatory difference as well,
Yes.
but travel-wise, it's not that different.
Yes, if we had that as an option, we would absolutely cover that. So we'll take that back. We'll see.
Amazing. Awesome. There's a question around intellectual delay. Is the questionnaire able to be adapted in a way that he can manage? So I guess this kind of goes to engagement of the person with Prader-Willi syndrome themselves, and whether intellectual disability, whether the materials are accessible to directly to the person with PWS.
So great question. All of the questionnaires are actually filled out by the caregiver, the primary caregiver, and not the patient themselves. And we understand that there are differences in the conceptual understanding of these questionnaires as well for each patient. So we wanted to make that easy. And also, luckily, the HQCT9, which is actually the hyperphagia questionnaire that's utilized at these visits, are meant just for the caregiver, because you can actually see the changes in your child over time. And so that's why we ask for the caregiver to be the same and consistent caregiver throughout the study period, because you'll see over time those dynamic changes.
Awesome. It's always interesting, I think, looking at the clinical trials and the placebo effect that comes in when we're talking about answering some of these questionnaires. I wonder if, in the context of speaking with the parent community and people with PWS themselves, whether you'd have any comments around the placebo effect and answering those questionnaires.
So I think I know Tian has some thoughts on this for sure. So I'll go first and then I'll hand it off to Tian. In terms of the placebo piece, it's important that there is a placebo controlling these phase 3 trials specifically, because you expect that regardless if you're with active or placebo, that will wash out essentially if there's changes in your behavior. And eventually over time, which is why it's 3 months. Our first study was 28 days, but the 3 months really helps you understand over time. And that duration is important. And then, of course, when we go into open label, we actually get to see everyone on drug and see what those behavioral changes are at that time in a longer study period.
And I want to add also, in the short duration of our study, the magnitude of change we saw, we think is extremely encouraging. If you look historically at attempts by other candidate medications, it's typical to see maybe a 2-point change as a contribution of the placebo in that same interval of time. And I think it's easily lost that the study that we had was only 28 days in length. And we do believe that over longer periods of time, we would exert even greater change. And that's not even at the optimized dosing for the majority of patients on that trial. So we're very encouraged. And of course, it has to be playing out with a larger number of patients. So we want to be good scientists and open-minded, but we're very, very encouraged, and we think we have a very strong basis of being encouraged that we'll do far better than placebo in the trial.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That's always good to hear.
Yeah.
So we have a question here, and actually I know of a couple of families potentially in this boat. My child with PWS is too young, but they have an older sibling who has hypothalamic obesity, so hyperphagia via a secondary mechanism. Are they able to participate in the trial is the question. And I guess the follow-up would be, whether you have future indications in mind.
So I actually had several craniopharyngioma patients where we diagnosed them and then followed through the lifespan of that pediatric actually patient. And I will tell you that it's tough, right? Because there isn't any other opportunity clinical trials. There's just one, I think one company at this time working in the space for HO. We actually think mechanistically, because it's hyperphagia that we're actually dealing with under hunger, would work in HO as well. And that's something that is on the table. I don't know how much more I can actually say at this point, but it's something that we've thought about. We want to give this drug to as many patients that it could be beneficial for. So it's something we've discussed as a company. When and if we can, we will share more.
And I think I remember the family asking the question I met last year, but I do, I like Monty stipulated, we think hypothalamic obesity is a potentially addressable indication, but in this trial, it won't be included just yet. But in terms of the age restriction, as I kind of, to the extent I'm restricted to say, just stay tuned for us, communicating more in the future. But for now, it's 13 years and older. But again, we have plans to expand that in the future.
Yeah. And I am a pediatric endocrinologist, so we definitely have looked into the younger age group. Trust me.
And look, I would add that's quite common with trials too. We quite often see that you gather that safety data in the older age group, yes, and then progressively push the age limits down as well. So we will watch that with interest, because there is definitely high interest amongst our families who have children younger than 13. Goes to another question here we have around when they turn 13, and I guess the recruitment window. I guess if your child is turning 13 after recruitment opens, 3 months or 6 months, or down, within that time period after, how long do you anticipate the trial will recruit in Australia?
Until we hit the enrollment rate, right? And so it's competitive enrollment. So that's one thing, but also just remember that we are working on trying to get younger patients in the trial. So it'll just depend on timelines and how that works out. I'm so excited that they're even thinking like that in terms of timelines for your own child, but we're trying everything we can to make sure it's all inclusive for the younger age group. So just stay tuned, like Etienne said, about that. But if we haven't enrolled fully, then they'll absolutely be able to participate.
Love it. So when the trial's full, it's full. But in the meantime, when you turn 13, reach out to, or maybe in the week or two beforehand, reach out to a study lead, and if the site's still open, then that will work.
Yes.
In terms of changes to the trial and openings of access, we will certainly, the foundation will certainly push out information as soon as it's available. So there'll be. We'll let you know as soon as we hear anything from Aardvark as well.
Trust me, we will get the word out.
Yep, on the megaphones. There's a question here in terms of other medications. So this one is specifically in regard to medications for other behavioral issues. Do you have any guidance around what other medications, anything that might be in or out in terms of trial design?
So there are some exclusion criteria at this time that exclude certain antipsychotic and behavioral medications as well. And one being Risperdal. And this will all be delineated when actually the website we even have for our trial will be approved from the regulatory side. So then you'll have access to it, and then you'll have access to see kind of these big things. But clinicaltrials.gov already has some of the major points of inclusion-exclusion criteria that you could see where the protocol lies. There's also certain medications, say for diabetes, excluding type 1 diabetes, including type 2 diabetes, but all of this is outlined. We are working on trying to see at a future time if there's a way to have more flexibility, but right now, in its current state, there are some exclusions.
And I also want to clarify, it's not because we don't think our drug will work in that circumstance. It's just because it's another variable and confounder, and it just makes the data analysis a little bit more challenged. And some of these medications can also spike appetite, which can mask as HQ-CT score, even though. But we think if we're resolving the underlying hunger, that may kind of impair some signal, possibly. But we do actually philosophically and scientifically think that we don't have like a barrier in terms of addressing hyperphagia for those patients either. It's just a matter of just for the optimizing the output for the study design.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just keeping that noise down so you can get a nice clear read on whether the drug works for your approval applications. Yeah.
Right.
I think that sort of sounds like a good point to encourage people to have a conversation with the clinicians that manage their care. Every individual and every individual with PWS has a unique combination of medications. So we can't make specific recommendations in a forum like this, and you should always go and talk to the physician, the clinician who's looking after you. And we have in the past, we've had questions around, if my clinician is not one of the site leads, can I still do the trial?
Yes.
So yes, it's a short version. Yeah.
Yes.
So
I think you would also want to make sure that your actual care is part of the plan of research, right? So that'd be a coordination between your primary care person as well as the lead investigator for the trial itself. And that's a common thing that happens, especially if you're in Perth and you travel to another state. That's actually going to be what's the main thing that's going to connect you, is the person that you get your care from versus the person who's leading the trial.
Yeah, so you're adding to your team, and there's no limitations on whether you can join the trial based on which clinicians you're seeing. You just keep everyone in the loop, and and make sure you're getting that personalized advice that's relevant to your situation and the particular combination of medical and allied health care team that sits around you as well. So another question on how changes. How fast are the changes present and anecdotal? Ooh, I'm not sure what that one actually is. Laura, you might pop that question in again. I'm not quite following it.
See the one
So,
from the top, she sort of
there we go. Got
verified a
it.
little
Yep,
bit better.
I've just refreshed. So, why is the age limit of 13? Is that to do with hyperphagia or is it safety?
It's actually neither. It's like a regular.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Nancy, please.
No, it was just regulatory actually, and then kind of with clinical trials, you need to have certain preclinical data that supports age groups, and so it's based on that, and then also we had our discussions with the agencies based on our preclinical data, and we were able to actually go to 13 from the 17, and then the next iteration is to go much younger once preclinical data is available, and that's typically the same kind of format that most companies follow. I do think it's beneficial only because of that safety data. We'll have it available to allow us to dose younger patients, and that's important too.
Excellent.
I do also want to address the question. I think I understand how fast the changes are present. When we actually conducted our study, the first formal assessment was 2 weeks after the dosing, but anecdotally and based on the mechanism and based on how we think our drug is working, we think there's a very high probability on the same day of dosing, there's actually going to be a very tangible effect. And in fact, I would reference back in our study with general obesity subjects, we have had them fast overnight, and then there's the serum hormone ghrelin is kind of reflective of hunger state. It's increased and by the way, just not to throw so much science, but ghrelin is a hormone that really is indicative of your self-perception of hunger. In general obesity, we think it's a reflection of hunger, not appetite. And oftentimes with general obesity, the ghrelin level is not that different than normal, but in Prader-Willi is up to 3 times higher than normal. So you can understand how much discomfort there must be feeling. And in our general obesity study, we had fasting overnight. So there's a small hunger challenge. And then they were in the morning, they're skipping breakfast. And the ghrelin goes up in the patients on placebo, and it stayed flat in the ones that were on 101. So that's 1 day of dosing, and already the effects are seen within that day. So if we do feel that there's a very high probability that you would feel something in the same day, not a guarantee, of course, but we believe that's the way the drug works.
Well, that's exciting and very good news.
Mhm.
Does it increase from there? Like, is the sort of, do you see a build-up period? So, a very quick initial response and then increasing response from there, or is it a bit more sort of an on and off kind of?
The true scientific answer is that we don't know, but we think it should increase over time, and we have lots of reasons to think it should increase over time, and that's why we're so optimistic that if we assess at 3 months, it should, in our mind, we have a very high probability to magnify the response that we're seeing at 1 month.
Excellent. Well, we'll watch those scientific numbers roll in and cross all our fingers. So we have a question for someone, for a Prader-Willi participant who is not obese, will the trial be beneficial as well? So
Yes.
is there a link with obesity?
So there is no link to obesity specifically. It's if you have a certain level of hyperphagia, right? Just if you have hyperphagia, actually, then it should be effective. And actually, half of our patients that were involved in phase 2 were within normal BMI, if that helps you understand. And we still had benefit across most subjects. And I think that's important to understand. Will it help with obesity? We are hopeful. We had, as Tian mentioned in the earlier slide, so we had seen within a very short period of time changes in fat mass and then an improvement in lean mass, which is kind of the muscle mass that you have. And to be able to see that in a short period of time, and you stretch that out for 3 months and even longer, then we expect even more of a dynamic change. And eventually that should affect BMI overall, or the fat mass, which is more important to differentiate than just BMI.
Excellent. I think it's always interesting teasing apart those separate but related factors.
Right.
So there's also a question around the different stages of hyperphagia. So I guess the interest here is particularly pre-hyperphagia, but whether ARD-101 will work differently or have different outcomes, I guess, for people who are in the different nutritional stages of Prader-Willi syndrome.
So I think I'm understanding the question is that if you don't have hyperphagia and then you start taking the drug, how does that affect?
More specifically, the cohort of people who are just on the verge of hyperphagia, so just pre-hyperphagia,
Sure.
but in that step immediately prior, where they're perhaps seeing food changes and those early stages of food interest that perhaps isn't full-blown hyperphagia yet.
Sure. So we hope that with approval, this drug will be available to those in that early stage as well. Obviously, with the clinical trial, you have to have a certain level of hyperphagia so we can see that it's effective, truly effective for hyperphagia in its mild to severe form. And then with approvals, we hope that is available to anyone who's starting to see those changes. And then you could probably be able to capture that and ensure that it stays stable over time. But that's only after we truly understand the changes over time for true hyperphagia.
Interesting. Thank you. Can we perhaps sideways now a little bit into what you're seeing in terms of the behavioural profile? There's a bit of interest, I guess, around understanding what sort of changes you're seeing, what types of behaviours were perhaps being modified through that phase 2.
So Tian, go ahead. I know Tian has a couple of, and I'll piggyback on some anecdotes, but we always love talking about this as well.
Yeah, we're very, very optimistic that this pathway, this upregulation of the CCK release of that the patients can make, but they just don't release, that has a lot of tie-in to the anxiety and inflammation and constipation. This all regulated by CCK, and there's lots of anecdotal and also inferential data relating to this. So that's actually, there are going to be key secondary endpoints in our phase 3. We are looking for that because we are expecting a high probability of success to abrogate those, and this based on very remarkable anecdotes about diminished anxiety, even superseding what you would expect as it relates to the hyperphagia as well too, and the constipation that is often evident in Prader-Willi syndrome, that is explainable with a deficient CCK release too, and it's related to this gut-brain pathway, and just as a kind of another inferential suggestion. Again, this is just scientific talk here, but like people with partial transections of their vagus, if they have some kind of injury to this nerve, oftentimes normal people with an injury there will start having more anxiety, more hunger, more constipation as well. So we're doing the opposite. We're increasing that signal. So we're very, very encouraged about that, and we think it makes sense given how we believe the drug is working.
And the vagus nerve, for those are wondering, just in case, it's a nerve that innervates or is part of the pathway from your gut, stomach to your brain, and that's where the CCK pathway kind of works, which is the I'm full hormone, you can call it that, and then ghrelin is I'm hungry hormone. And so when ghrelin goes up, we eat, then traditionally the CCK would be released and tell your brain, okay, you're full. And that's the pathway goes through this vagus nerve that Tian's talking about. And if you affect the vagus nerve, you actually affect all of the feedback that will tell you that you're full.
It's interesting because constipation isn't talked about a lot outside of the Prader-Willi kind of the tighter Prader-Willi groups. It is such a massive issue as well. So I think that's really encouraging to hear that this is something that might lead to some improvement for constipation as well. It's definitely an underrepresented trial outcome, shall we say. Yeah.
And you will see everything that we actually put into these outcomes or the endpoints that we're looking at, even the questionnaires, very purposeful because of the things that we truly believe will change over time in this trial. And so we know that the trial itself is very burdensome, regardless of what you participate in. It's a lot to do. And so everything we put on has a purpose. Everything we took out, we said, we're like, they don't need to do this, including fasting, took that out. And it was important for us to make sure, and we talked to patient communities through advocacy groups and even our investigators to make sure we were not burdening the families. But everything we have on there has a purpose.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really good to hear as well, because you're right that I mean, that kind of goes back to the right fit again, is that, clinical trials are so important to getting new therapies through and making them available. But making sure that that trial is, it's a right fit medically, but also a right fit for the family in terms of the time it takes to go into the visits, the disruption to school or family life. So it's really wonderful to hear that you've given so much consideration to that load and kept it to the minimal that's needed to get scientifically useful data and to progress through to those registration trials. We have a question around some of those, so that the blood tests, or specifically they're wanting to know whether CCK levels can be directly measured. So is it something you see in blood, or is it just something that's inferred?
I can answer
Right.
that. So CCK is actually something that's like a common currency of how nerves communicate with each other. So if the idea of using CCK systemically is challenging. So our drug is actually releasing CCK only locally around the gut level. The CCK that makes it into the blood is quickly degraded. So we believe we're increasing the local concentration of CCK around the gut, but the serum level doesn't increase, and you want that to occur because too high a level of CCK in the entire body is also having a lot of side effects too, and we're not approaching it that way. However, we do believe a very reliable biomarker is ghrelin, which is something downstream from CCK. So as Mansi mentioned, when you increase CCK, you decrease the level of the hunger hormone ghrelin, and that's something we can measure and something that we've seen decrease that really kind of reinforces our contention that we're lowering hunger. And we will be looking for that biomarker as one of those secondary measures in our trial. So that's what we're measuring, with the ghrelin as a reflection of CCK. They move in the opposite direction, but we believe we can measure that.
Excellent. Oh, it sounds good. I'm curious to know, so that this is, we've obviously seeing a change in the landscape of medications that are available. There's been the approval in the US of Vycat, and there are other companies working in phase 2. There's carbetocin in phase 3 as well. How do you think all of this will fit together? So I guess mechanistically, I'm asking, will it be enough to just address hunger, or will we need to address both hunger and appetite? There's a range of other medications out there as well. Where do you see ARD-101 sort of fitting in terms of the broader picture of Prader-Willi syndrome?
So I guess I'll speak from a pediatric endocrine standpoint. I think the more options, the better. I don't think it's going to be only one thing's going to fit somebody. I think you're going to have to kind of figure that out as options are available. I will say that we hope to be synergistic with other options out there for patients, just because our mechanism of action of this drug, how it actually works in your body, is so different from even any of the trials that are ongoing or even with the approvals here in the US. But that being said, I think that, like Tian said, we have high conviction of what we're trying to accomplish and what we've seen. And so we hope that based on the phase 3 data, we'll be able to show that actually, if you take this, then maybe this is all you need. But if you don't and you want to address the other part, GLP-1s aren't usually what's used in the Prader-Willi community. It's usually used for type 2 diabetes, actually, in the PWS community more than it is for weight loss. But if there is something else that you could use an adjunct to that, or if it's another PWS hyperphagia drug, because our mechanism is so different, you likely could take them together. But we'll see as we are available, to the larger audience and what is available in Australia specifically over time. But that's something that obviously hasn't been determined because no one's done the studies where you're taking both. But that'll be important to keep track of as well.
I think it's going to be.
So go ahead, Diane.
No, carry on.
Oh no, just to echo what Monsi stipulated, to keeping it positive, we don't think there's any mutual exclusion, and the mechanisms are all different from each other. But of course, we think that based on our understanding, we're addressing a lot of the underlying drivers for manifestations for Prader-Willi syndrome, and given the safety profile, we think that there are a lot of unique attributes for ARD-101. But again, we don't want to say too much. We have certain limitations given we want to be sensitive, but of course we do believe in our own program, and we don't think there's any incompatibility with what's been going on.
Yeah, I love that idea that we're moving towards a future where there are multiple options that can be available for people with Prader-Willi syndrome as well. I think it's an exciting time, which is good.
Yeah, it's about time.
Yes, yeah, it's been a long time coming, and it's exciting to have so much right on the horizon. It'll be more exciting in a few years' time as we move through, but it's great. Look, I think that looks like we've exhausted the questions. So I think it just is. Are there any questions you feel we've missed? Is there anything else either of you would like to add at this point?
I think just to thank you again. We're really grateful for the opportunity to bring this study forward to Australia. We believe fully that you're partners in this with us. And so we want to make sure that we move this forward in a way that is beneficial and the least burdensome. But we're so grateful that people are choosing to participate and move this science forward, because we truly believe in what we're doing from multiple, from the way it works, how it works, and the safety behind it. So excited to get this going. It's soon, I know it, and I can't wait to announce that, and then have start patients coming in and really see it as well.
Yeah. Fantastic. Mansi, Tenley, thank you so much. I'm very excited that we have you here in Australia. I'm going to hand back to Kath now to finish off.
Thank you so much. I think we have one slide left at the end. We do. Look, Tien Lee and Mansi Jamin, I just want to thank you. We have, in the 10 years for us since our organisation started, we have gone from a future where a hyperphagia drug is a dream, and now we're in a position where a hyperphagia drug is actually, being tested with clinical trials. That is just such a transformation for our whole community. So thank you so much for all of your hard work to get us to this place. And today it has been really wonderful to hear new information. Tien, when you came down to Australia last year, it was so exciting to hear your speech and to hear about that distinction between hunger and appetite. And as I've said previously, it just resonated so deeply with our families. But to hear now, when you start talking about the links with anxiety, inflammation, constipation, I mean, you're talking my everyday life, or my child's everyday life that I watch for her. So thank you so much, really, for continuing this work and for really providing very meaningful dialogue with us. One of our families last year called you a manufacturer of hope. And that's really what you are for us. So thank you.
Thank you. We're honored.
Yeah, very much appreciated. We want to do right by you, the families, and the folks suffering from Prader-Willi. We really believe in what we're doing, and that we're very eagerly anticipating the opportunity to have this manifest. So we really appreciate all the support and belief, and that we want to be able to execute on what we think is a very meaningful program.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Look, for all of our families, you can find more information about clinical trials on our website and also on our YouTube channel. And of course, one more plug for our walk in Sydney on the 15th of June. And of course, end of financial year coming up, please remember us. and all of your support will make sure that we can keep up this great work. Thank you, Dr. Tien Lee. Thank you, Dr. Monsi Jamin, and we look forward to talking with you again in the future.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.